Welcome to Workplace Psychology with Dr. Martha Greidick. I'm Dr. Martha Greidick. This podcast examines a wide variety of work-related issues through the lens of industrial and organizational psychology. And while many of the topics discussed here may be seen as intended for white-collar employees and their employers, in reality, the ideas presented here are applicable across organizations and industries. Additionally, many of the topics discussed here may be applicable outside of the workplace. I encourage you to examine what's presented here, apply what makes sense to you, and simply discard the rest. As humans, we all feel emotions, but sometimes emotions get a little bit elevated, perhaps too elevated for what's acceptable at the workplace. This is especially important when we think about an emotion such as anger. And while emotions are real and a true part of the human experience, there's a time and a place where all adults with jobs, and we all have to act like adults who have control over ourselves and who are professionals. The bottom line is that while emotions are real and they're quite normal, it's important to be in control of our emotions and the behaviors that are associated with the emotions, especially when we're at work. When a situation arises that gets your emotions elevated, what can you do in order to maintain your composure and remain in control of yourself, your behaviors, and how you conduct yourself at the workplace? There are things that you can do, simple yet effective things that will help you out. The key is to recognize that you're having emotions and the emotion or emotions are growing stronger so that you can take action before the emotions get to a level where you might feel yourself to become out of control. First and foremost, if you are in a situation that is really getting the best of you, remove yourself from that situation. For the most part, we can excuse ourselves from a difficult situation at work. And I understand that may not be appropriate or something that everybody can do in every situation. But for the most part, it's okay to excuse yourself from a situation, especially if you feel like you're having a difficult time controlling your emotions or not letting your emotions become elevated in that particular situation. So first and foremost, excuse yourself so that you can remove yourself from the situation in question. The second thing to do is to change your focus as quickly as possible. There's really not much benefit to removing yourself from a situation if you go somewhere else and dwell on your emotions and what had happened, allowing your emotions to become elevated. That's not the point of removing yourself from the situation. You want to remove yourself from a situation so that you can more easily distract yourself away from that emotion that you're trying to gain control over. You may be familiar with some very simple ways of distracting yourself as a way of changing your focus. So for example, you may have seen people wear rubber bands on their wrists and they might snap the rubber band, and that has kind of become a cliche or a joke among people, but really it is effective if you use it appropriately because it forces you to focus on a physical sensation and get you away from ruminating on whatever just happened and focusing on your emotions. Another really easy thing to do is to do something like run some cold water over your hands and your wrists. That creates a new sensation, something different, changes your focus, and allows you to cool down quite literally. When you run cold water over your wrists, that is where you can actually cool the blood that is running in your veins, just right there where your veins are near the surface of the skin in the wrist area. So it's a good way to switch your focus. Engage all of your senses as a way of switching your focus. So for example, you could walk out of the situation and go into a different space, maybe go outside, maybe take a quick walk. Maybe you could enjoy the sounds or the sights or the smells or a sense of touch or even a sense of taste if you wanted to. The point I'm making is that you can engage any and multiple or all of your senses as a way of changing your focus, as a way of distracting yourself from a situation that does not feel good, that would potentially otherwise cause you to become more emotional than you would like to be or that you should be at work. Some people may engage in physical activity as a way of getting out of a situation that is questionable. That may include going for a quick walk. That may include just going to get a drink of water or going to use the restroom. Some people might sneak back into their office and do a few quick push-ups, and that releases that pent-up energy that may otherwise go towards an outburst of emotions. Maybe a quick jump rope exercise, something that is appropriate for your work environment and for you, but that would be helpful to you. But I think that you're starting to get the idea of where we're going here. Remove yourself from the situation, the questionable situation, and work on changing your focus. But do it in such a way that the focus change is benign so that it's helping you, or positive so that it's helping you in the situation, not something that will get you more irritated or more angry about another issue. That's missing the point altogether. We're looking to change your focus so that you can regain control and composure before you lose your control. It may be entirely necessary that you rejoin the situation that got you upset to begin with. Once you have composure and you feel in control of your feelings and your behaviors, it's a good time to rejoin the situation. But the reality is that that may not be the end of whatever happened. You may have to deal with your feelings, your emotions afterwards. You may have to perhaps do something, be proactive after work, perhaps at home. In other words, it's okay and oftentimes necessary to address your feelings at a later time, such as after you get home from work. One of the things that I recommend that you do is acknowledge your feelings. There's really no point in pretending that you didn't feel anything just because it may not have been a pleasant feeling or it may not have been an appropriate situation or a feeling not appropriate for work. It's still important to acknowledge that you felt something and to identify, label, and name that feeling. What did you actually feel? Feeling something can be confusing, but identifying how you feel, labeling that feeling, giving it a name, is a helpful step towards resolution for dealing with your feelings. Now that you're in the safety of your own home and away from the questionable situation, away from work, allow yourself to actually feel the feeling. Give yourself some time for mindful contemplation. Allow yourself to experience that feeling for what it is. Don't hide it or sweep it under the rug or shut it away in a closet just because it wasn't pleasant or you wish that you didn't have that feeling or didn't experience it while at work. Let yourself feel it. After all, we're all human, and part of being human is feeling feelings of all kinds. You may want to decide to express your feelings in some healthy ways. That does not mean destructive ways. That does not mean ways which will compound the problem. We're talking about healthy ways. What are some healthy ways in which you can express your feelings? Well, one thing you could do is talk to someone. Talk to a trusted confidant or perhaps a therapist, somebody who will listen, maybe give advice if appropriate, but allows you to process your feelings as you talk. Remember, there's a big difference between talking about things in a healthy way, in a way that helps you to process, versus complaining and working yourself up into a much more intense feeling than you started with. Those are two very different things. The idea here is to do what's healthy for you. So talk it out in a way that will help you to release that feeling, process that feeling, and get beyond the feeling. Another good thing that you may consider is something like journaling, writing. You may want to do something physical like exercise, go for a walk or a run, or whatever other form of exercise that you enjoy. Some people engage in hobbies or some kind of art as a way of expressing their feelings. That's another option that's worth your time and exploration if that's something that interests you. You may want to consider the root of the feelings and think about whether this is something that occurs on a regular basis. And if it is, perhaps there is a root problem that needs to be addressed at work. Or on the other hand, it could just be one situation that happened once and got you upset, and now you're past it, you processed the feelings, and that's the end of it. So it could be either one, and it's important for you to understand which one it is so that you can address the root of the problem if there really is a root of the problem. As you can see, these are pretty straightforward and simple suggestions. However, they are also very effective. So it may be worth your time to review the suggestions that I offered in this episode, because if you should find yourself in a situation at work where you may fear that you're losing your composure or that you may not be in complete control of your emotions and your behaviors, it may be worth your time to understand how you can help yourself to decrease the situation, even if it's only your internal situation or your response to what's going on around you, in such a way that it helps you to remain composed and professional while at work. It could really make all the difference. And when we look at extreme situations, we've all heard of such things on the news or in social media. It could really make a big, big difference being able to remain composed and in control of yourself. As this episode comes to an end, let's review what was discussed. We're all human, which means that we are all subject to feelings and emotions, which is perfectly normal. But as adults with jobs, as professionals, we all have to make sure that we keep our emotions and our behaviors in check, especially when it comes to work. Of course, it's inevitable that sometimes we find ourselves in a situation that is less than ideal and maybe we become upset. But there are things that we can do before the situation starts to feel out of control or before we lose our composure. The first thing to do is to remove yourself from a situation as soon as possible. Excuse yourself so that you can engage in switching your focus or changing your focus. Do whatever it takes. Engage your senses as a means of changing your focus from something that's negative and potentially volatile to something that is benign or even positive if possible. Address your feelings after work. Allow yourself to acknowledge your feelings and label them, but also to feel them. There's nothing wrong with feelings. It's what we do with them that can make a big difference in our experience and the experiences of those around us. So allow yourself to feel and experience those feelings. You may want to find other ways of processing your feelings. Things such as walking or talking with someone or journaling may be especially helpful for some. And finally, remember that some situations are single events, whereas others may be deeply rooted and may be things that happen over and over again. It's worth your time to consider whether whatever caused the situation in question is something that has a deeper root that must be addressed. As the week unfolds, I invite you to reflect upon your own feelings when it comes to work and difficult situations. How well do you tend to handle them? And could you use some of the suggestions outlined here in this episode as a way of helping you out? Some people have a better handle on this than others, and that's okay. But generally speaking, everybody can always learn more and improve, even if just a little. If you're experiencing this podcast in an audio-only version, I invite you to check out my YouTube channel where you can find the video version of this podcast. In addition to the video version of the podcast, you can also find other videos on my YouTube channel, and those focus on stress management. So I invite you to check out my YouTube channel. The link to that is in the description below. Thank you for joining me today. Please subscribe to this podcast. I look forward to seeing you here again next time. Until then, I wish you joy and well-being.